Today we need to talk about fans being mad at Jung Kook over something he said about Taeyang during a live stream. I want to get into the producers of Seven really offending ARMY and what they said, and then we have HYBE talking about Jung Kook's reunion possibility. So hey Dumplings, it's Dave Desai. Hater or not, make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell on. Grab your dumpling, tastefully mug merch, and let's go. So I want to start off with the press conference and get into why this matters with Jung Kook. First of all, if you're unaware, there are annual and sometimes multiple times during the year when press conferences are held over BTS's album and promotion cycle. Just a quick note, when these things happen, people often say, oh wow, I didn't think music was this serious or whatever. And to this I say, music itself and entertainment is not this serious and does not require a press conference. The whole point of these conferences is not for reporters to sit there and blow smoke up HYBE's butt, or it be an opportunity for potential tabloids to come up with a scandalous story. The point is, because HYBE is a public label on the stock market, the album release and any album that HYBE could potentially release with other artists affect the stock of HYBE. So stock typically goes up during a BTS comeback, and all these potential investors think it's a good idea to invest in HYBE when BTS has a comeback. Investors often like to invest for the sake of dividends, which a lot of stocks offer. I don't know if HYBE does offer a significant dividend with the purchase of stocks, but if they do, this is why. And in case you didn't know, dividends are a form of profit sharing of the company. So if the company makes a lot of profit, like what a BTS comeback could be, the stock investors would get a significant share of that profit if they invested, which dividends being profit sharing is something I mentioned in a previous video, and someone told me that I had no idea what I was talking about. Some of the courses I took in college were finance. What do you mean? Is this idea that a flamboyant guy on camera talking about K-pop can't possibly be educated about money? Anyway, that is the reason for these press conferences, not because of music, but because of the shareholders. The reporters like to share and report what is shared during the conference, so investors can be aware and decide if they want to invest or not. During a conference in 2022, reporters asked the CEO about Jung Kook and his enlistment status. Jung Kook is the youngest, meaning if he was following the footsteps of J-Hope and Jin and going right at the last minute, Jung Kook would have until 2028. Fans get annoyed when this question comes up, and as I said earlier, these questions have nothing to do with the fandom or the conspiracy that the fandom has that every reporter is trying to draw out haters to BTS. The question is being asked so that investors can understand if Jung Kook will make it back from the enlistment to fulfill the BTS reunion, and or is Jung Kook going to wait until 2028 to enlist. This would drastically change whether or not investors want to invest in HYBE or BTS. Even the announcement of BTS taking a hiatus was something that caused the stock to drop. However, these reporters were getting hate. When I say people who don't understand the point of these things should not give opinions, this is what I am talking about. I don't believe every single person who may be younger or unfamiliar with how the world works should be watching every piece of content that BTS is in. Because BTS isn't just doing entertainment, they have content that is very catered for just adults, and adults who enjoy boring things like stock, i.e. an investor's press conference. Now, allegedly, the CEO did not respond to the comment with a definitive answer. Basically, the response was that things will be discussed with the artist and that everyone hopes BTS will act as BTS in 2025. This is, of course, contingent on the idea that Jung Kook releases his solo album in time, and it does go over the cutoff in which he has to make in order to make the 2025 reunion. I think this is likely still. I think if he releases a solo album within the next few months, he'll still have time to promote it, and then if Taeyang wants to go, he can do that, and then everyone can enlist and still be okay. There's still hope. So I don't know if everyone is freaking out or whatever it is, the reunion is not in danger. And the thing is, even if the reunion ends up being in 2026, that's still okay, and who knows what will happen. I wouldn't be too upset if Jung Kook just decides to not enlist now and do his solo and do the reunion in 2025 and then just enlist in 2028. That's not the worst idea. Either way, I think Jung Kook would update us on his thoughts and feelings as they happen. Jungkook has been very active live streaming, and interestingly enough, a lot of the concern that the internet has with Jungkook and what he is doing is often answered by Jungkook during these streams. He takes time to respond and read each question. Before you know it, the generic questions like when is your album out or whatever is not being asked anymore, and you're getting more questions that the fandom fights over. One specific rumor that has been an issue is one involving Jungkook and Taeyang. As we've talked about before, there is this big theory that the members are dating, and I'll leave that up to you to decide if you believe that or not. The two have never come out and said anything, but there was a theory that originated from that side of the fandom that believes that Taeyang and Jungkook are living together. There's been fan wars, there's been so much stuff that has happened within just this conspiracy. During a recent live stream, someone asked Jungkook where Taeyang was. Jungkook responded that he hasn't been as much in touch with all the other members, likely due to his busy schedule. Jungkook has been very open about this idea that he does not like to use his phone. So there's probably a million texts that Jungkook has given one-word answers to, or just a bunch of unread messages. So Jungkook specified that he will ask and get back to everyone on where Taeyang is. And then interestingly enough, Jungkook also read a comment that asked, wouldn't Jungkook know because isn't Taeyang living with him? Jungkook made a face, and I think that was a pretty clear answer that he thought this was a weird question. Because Taeyang does have his own apartment, we have seen that before, and I think all the members have their own place. There really is no reason for them to be living in the same living situation. They spend years in a tiny dorm, literally on top of each other. Of course, now that they have the opportunity to spread out, why would they not? Jungkook seems like he likes his space and his alone time. Him mentioning that he doesn't really talk to the members that much lately also probably indicates he might not be dating any specific member. This of course caused some backlash, and it's quote-unquote ruining that fantasy that some of the fandom has. However, eventually the members are going to start dating, and it could be each other, but a lot of times relationships don't always work that way. And if you're together all the time, you might want to look for other people to have a relationship with. I don't know. However, this is silly. There has been more backlash over Jungkook, and this one is definitely interesting. I think one of the reasons the fandom hates when BTS members work with Western artists, producers, and everything is because the producers sometimes are insensitive to certain things, or at least they're accused of being insensitive. The producers of Seven had some things to say involving Jungkook and the whole process of making that song. One of the first things that annoyed the fandom was when the producers called BTS fans rabid. The definition of this word is basically intense support of something, which is what ARMYs is. I think a language barrier could possibly even be an issue with some of the fans that might interpret this word as problematic when it's just what the truth is. But people were not as upset at this as they were when the producer Watt talked about how Jungkook is very similar to Justin Timberlake. Instead of talking about Justin Timberlake's skill and artistry, Watt talks about how Jungkook is similar due to the fact that Justin broke out of NSYNC, just like what they believe Jungkook will do, and specifically said similar way of breaking out of NSYNC. Of course, I understand the backlash here. Obviously, this implies that Jungkook is leaving BTS or that the reunion will not happen. The mindset of a lot of these producers are running off this idea that Jungkook doing his own solo stuff implies that BTS has disbanded, like a lot of the other boy bands that have come before BTS. However, there's something different with BTS that a lot of American producers might find it hard to understand or even know. It's this idea that in K-pop, a band can literally go solo and later come back, and almost always does. And while I understand the backlash, we must also think about things from another perspective. Of course, the producers will think that because that is the American timeline for boy bands. And it's not like Jungkook and the producers sat in the studio and talked about these sorts of things. I'm sure in any normal case, when the producers and the artists have lunch or just sit around and socialize, they would normally ask, oh, what is the conversation when you guys disbanded? But in this case, that obviously didn't happen with the language barrier. We also have to be understanding of the fact that a lot of these producers aren't only serving one artist. It's hard to near impossible for these producers to read every single news article and story about BTS before they start working with the members. It's the job of maybe a news reporter to do that, but definitely not the job of a producer. So it's pretty understandable for this producer to think that BTS has disbanded. Of course, I am sure after this backlash, they will know. But the producers have been extremely supportive over Jungkook being on this song, and they just thought that this was the highest compliment they could give Jungkook. They didn't think it would be controversial. For most artists, it is a big compliment to follow in the footsteps of iconic singers from NSYNC or One Direction or whatever. Let me know what you think. Make sure you check out my Patreon for more videos, link down below. Thanks for this lovely comment right here. Love you, bye.